Welcome back to Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. I have made a commitment to you guys of bringing on leaders who are here to replace the establishment with progressive values and leading with those values. And no one has done a better job of that the last several years for his entire career. And you've probably only heard of him the last several years because of his runs for mayor. But Brad Lander is here running for U.S. Congress against Dan Goldman in New York District 10. Extraordinarily excited to speak with you today, Brad.
Great to be with you, Qasim. Thank you.
There's so much I want to talk about, and I think I want to start with the first time I heard about you when you were running for mayor of New York City, and I think that ad where you and Zohran's kind of co-endorsed each other was the first time that I started to pay attention to you a bit more closely, because I've been following Zohran for a little bit longer. I think I had the South Asian connection thing going with him. And then I thought, okay, well, if him and Brad are connected, let me look into you and your background. And it impressed me immensely. And I felt much better about the New York race suddenly, because I'm like, okay, if we can't get Zohran, then we get Brad. We're still in really good shape. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what ignited that run? And then we'll get into a congressional run here in a second too.
Yeah, sure. So I'll take one big step back. I helped bring ranked choice voting to New York City a few years ago. I sponsored the legislation that eventually became a charter referendum because I thought it would be a good way for doing politics as a team, and not always having it to be just like one person out there. Now, of
Yeah.
course, in the mayor's race, when I got in, I hoped that that would help me win. Originally, when Zohran got in the race, like a lot of people, I assumed he was probably just a little too far left to win the race, and that therefore maybe the progressive lane would make more sense. But as his campaign took off and so many people were supporting him and it became clear that it was his moment, I was sure I did not want Andrew Cuomo to be the mayor of New York City. And in some ways, that's what really motivated me. It was like, okay, if I don't want Cuomo to be mayor, I got to put my money where my mouth is. It's clear that we need to cross-endorse Zohran and that he's got the best chance to win. And so, it was not easy to come to that decision to just reckon with, okay, I'm not going to win this race, but I need to make sure that Andrew Cuomo doesn't win it. And then something quite beautiful happened when we filmed that video in front of the coffee cart. And
Yeah.
so many people said, wait, politics doesn't have to be a sour, selfish ego trip. You could
Yeah.
team up and it could be a team effort for our values. And it really unlocked this beautiful well of solidarity. And then, of course, especially at this moment, to have a Muslim New Yorker and a Jewish New Yorker say we're not going to be divided from each other, part of what launched my run for Congress and a different vision of how we could do politics at this moment.
And I want to double down on those 2 points, Brad, because I think that reaction from people where we're all so like we're clenched, ready to fight, ready to, our fists up, ready to punch and throw a punch. And then to see you two like give high fives and to be courteous to each other, not just on the political framework, but with what's happening in Israel and Palestine, to see the highest ranking elected Jewish official in New York City and the person running for the highest office in New York City, period, working together, saying the hell with the culture wars. This is a matter of humanity and justice. I mean, I got to tell you, I had like aunties at the mosque who have never, ever talked about politics be like, Beta, do you understand what's happening in New York City? Why can't you be like Zohran? I'm like, thanks. Okay, let me just go and be like Zohran. That's a very easy thing to do. But
I
I got
got
to
a lot
tell
of
you,
that as well, for what it's
right?
worth. So
It's a beautiful thing. And I think this point that you made, and I think for the folks watching about, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And I think your humility in saying, hey, there's a greater cause here than just me. And let me build that greater cause. I think anyone who underestimates the impact you had in ensuring that Zohran was elected is doing a disservice, because I think that's something that you deserve all the flowers in the world for. Zohran, of course, won his race. He did it the right way. And the fact that you were there to support him for the right reason speaks immensely about your character, which is why I'm so excited about your run for U.S. Congress against someone who might as well be a Republican at this point. Talk a little bit about kind of your origin story for why you're running for Congress in the 10th District of New York City.
look, this is a five-alarm fire for our democracy, for working families who can't afford the cost of living, who see that the gap between the rich and powerful and working families has never been greater. And that's a big part of what opened the door to Donald Trump. I think Democrats have to own that more. It's like, of course, everyone wants to stand up and fight Trump, and more people rightly are protecting our immigrant neighbors and can see the danger Trump is causing. But we got to fight harder to build a Democratic Party that really fights for working people and is not the party of billionaires and super PACs. And Dan
Yeah.
Goldman, who's currently my representative, is a quarter billionaire backed by corporate PACs and crypto PACs and AIPAC, and he can't therefore be the one to lead unrigging the economy
Yeah.
or building a foreign policy that won't compromise on anybody's humanity.
Are you hearing folks talk about the hypocrisy right now that we're seeing? Democrats are railing against Trump, rightfully so, for this absurd bombing of Iran and spending money on a yet another Middle East war while folks here don't have health care. The same people who just spent $38 billion to Netanyahu to bomb Gaza. Is this coming up in the campaign? Are you hearing about this at the doors?
Yes, it is. I mean, of course, first and foremost tends to be issues in the district, the cost of housing and healthcare and childcare.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, this district, people in it, including the Jewish folks in it, don't want to be providing unconditional U.S. military support for Israel's continuing destruction of Gaza, for settler violence in the West Bank, for the occupation of Lebanon now. And yes, it's Democrats who say some version of, I don't like Trump prosecuting this war, but who are continuing to support unconditional U.S. aid for Israel's ongoing human rights violations and who continue to take AIPAC money and endorsements despite what they're doing to undermine our democracy. I do think people see that hypocrisy.
Just tuning in, we're speaking with Brad Lander, running for U.S. Congress in the 10th District of New York. When we talk about the affordability crisis in your district in particular, what are you hearing as the top couple of issues? Is it housing? Is it healthcare? Is it all of the above? And just to kind of put a finer point on that, where do you think the Biden and Harris administration went wrong, where people didn't recognize or understand the difference in economic policy? Because you look at the polling at that time of the 2024 election, Republicans still polled better on economy than Democrats did. What do you think the party keeps getting wrong on this issue?
Yeah. Well, so certainly housing is number one here. I mean, the cost of housing, in the Manhattan part of the district, the average is over $5,000 a month. People don't have any belief that they'll be able to ever become homeowners, even like middle class, upper middle class kids, much less low income and working class folks in Sunset Park or Red Hook or Chinatown. So that's number one. But healthcare matters a lot, and that's what the federal government is especially responsible. So those two issues are what's really critical and on people's minds. I think the Biden-Harris administration failed to do a few things. First, it is critical to name the enemies here, like to point out the fact that it is billionaires rigging the economy that has grown the gap. I saw Graham Plattner say this thing yesterday that I thought was so smart. In 1990, there were fewer than 100 billionaires. And now there's almost 1,000 billionaires, 10 times more. But we don't have 10 times more affordable housing. We don't have 10 times more hospitals or healthcare institutions in our neighborhood. We don't have 10 times as much affordable childcare. The money was dragged upwards by
Yeah.
private equity investors and corporate CEOs and tech billionaires. And I think it is important to kind of name that. And then, of course, deliver for people in big, bold ways and show them. And look, that's what Zohran ran on, and that's what he's doing. He's showing here's where the new childcare is coming. He opened a new childcare
Yeah.
center in my neighborhood yesterday.
Great.
And fighting to really show people who's responsible and then deliver the goods.
There's a great study done by the Rand Corporation that looked at the trickle-down scam from when Reagan started it and found that far from the mythology of people want to redistribute wealth and socialism and communism, the reality over the last 5 decades in the United States has been a $79 trillion reallocation of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%.
Crazy.
That's fundamentally, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's modern day, oligarchy and kingship. What do you say to the folks who say, well, look, it's a deep blue seat. A Democrat is a Democrat. It doesn't matter. What are the main distinctions between you and Dan Goldman that people should pay attention to?
I mean, let's talk about the places where Dan Goldman has voted with Republicans. So he voted with Republicans to censure Rashida Tlaib for speaking up for Palestinian human rights, voted with Republicans to allow warrantless wiretaps in the 2024 authorization of FISA, and with Republicans against the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act to allow the government to buy private data from like weather apps and dating apps, voted with Republicans on crypto twice for both the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, which are like allowing corporations to issue stable coins like corporate money. What could go wrong? So, I mean, this is a moderate millionaire Democrat who tries to look like a progressive at election time, but really is not, and therefore is not going to be the fighter that working families need. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the big difference here.
Yeah, and also, Brad, I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. We constantly hear that, well, someone like Zohran's progressive values aren't going to fly in the rural part of the country. Even if we go with that theory for a minute, I think it's completely wrong. But even if we go with that theory, by that logic, shouldn't our members of Congress also be staunch progressives? Like, why are we tolerating these right-wing corporate Democrats who are more loyal to AIPAC and to the CEO of Microsoft than they are to the working family or the small business owner down the street?
I mean, no one at the moment likes what the AI PACs or billionaire tech bros or crypto PACs or APAC are doing to our party, to our economy, or to the planet. That's not urban or rural politics. Plenty of Republicans feel that. But look, what's important is to have Democrats who represent their districts well. It is
Yeah.
a diverse country, and the Democrats are a party of progressives like me and moderates, and we have to figure out how to work together in coalition. But that's not a good argument to have a progressive district like this one represented by someone who's so out of touch with it.
Where do you want to see the Democratic Party go on a national scale? I don't know where you are on Schumer and Jeffries. I'm not a big fan of them at all. I would love to hear your thoughts, whether you think they should continue as Senate majority and House majority leader, because I think we're going to win the House for sure and possibly the Senate. But even them aside, where do you want to see the future of the party? What's the brand that you want to see? Because I don't think the party even has a brand right now. And as low as Trump's approval rating is, the Democratic Party's approval rating is just as low, which should be an insult to everyone. I think the DNC is like 4 million in debt, while the RNC is 120 million in the bank, which shows that people just aren't donating because they're sick and tired of it. How do we turn that ship around?
Yeah. We have to be the party that fights harder for working families against billionaires. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to me. I mean, of course we have to stand up to Trump and protect our immigrant neighbors and defend our democracy, but the way to do that is to be the party that fights for working families. The one thing I would point to that I think the Democrats collectively got right over the past year was around healthcare, making the government shutdown about the fact that Republicans are trying to double people's exchange premiums
Yeah.
on the exchanges and cut Medicare and Medicaid. So I think House Democrats should make that our first big budget fight. Like we're not going to vote for a budget that puts any more money in for war and any more money in for Department of Homeland Security or ICE. And what we're going to insist on is putting the subsidies back to bring people's healthcare premiums down. And that'll put money in people's pockets quickly, even though we won't have the White House. So, yes, we need bolder leadership. And we need members really willing to press the leadership. Like, let's give props to Ro Khanna and Thomas
Yeah.
Massie. They've shown that if you're not so concerned about sitting at the cool kids table, if you don't just defer to leadership, look, sometimes you have to be in coalition. So I guess I'll say this. I mean, I am the one, I think, left insurgent candidate who's being straightforward, that I do plan to vote for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker. He is the leader of the coalition, and it's got to be a coalition of Democrats and Republicans. And the Speaker's vote is a time to come together in
Yeah.
coalition. But then you also have to know when to push and when to be like AOC when she sat in Nancy Pelosi's office. She voted for Nancy Pelosi to be Speaker, and she joined Sunrise in sitting in her office to demand action on climate, be like Ro Khanna, willing to put a discharge petition on the floor if that's what's necessary to get the Epstein files released and force the War Powers resolution onto the floor. So that's the kind of member I want to be, someone who is willing to be in coalition when we need to stand up to Trump and MAGA, someone who is willing to do things like a discharge petition when that's necessary, and somebody who fights hard to make sure, look, whether you're a progressive or a moderate, we've got to make this the party that fights for working families and is willing to stand up to corporate power to do it.
I'll be honest, Brad. There's very few people that I would hear say that about coalitions and take it as anything more than lip service. But you've already shown your ability to build coalitions and to make history. So respect to you. I don't have a rebuttal to that. I think you make a really good point and a really compelling point on that one as well. Let's say we get you through this primary and we're going to work our butts off to make it happen. You're elected. What are your priorities in your first 100 days in office?
Well, first, I'll say if you're a new member of Congress, you better stand up a really damn good local office that can provide constituent service for your constituents when they
Yeah.
need help on bread and butter issues. I served in the city council. It's a diverse district. It's got Chinatown and Sunset Park and Red Hook, working class neighborhoods, in addition to Wall Street and Tribeca. So I really want to do that. I'd like to get seats on House Financial Services Committee to fight for affordable housing, and on the House Foreign Affairs Committee to fight for a foreign policy that's grounded in human rights and international law. So I'll be looking to do that. And then, as I mentioned, I think the first big fight that Democrats should put up next year is to get the subsidies restored on the exchange and restore the Medicare and Medicaid subsidies. That's a thing that the House can do, even if we don't have the Senate. I hope we do. And even though we won't have the White House. And
We're
I guess
about
let me
six.
just add,
Yeah.
continuing to protect our immigrant neighbors obviously is
Yeah.
absolutely critical, and I'll keep putting my body on the line and using every tool we have to do it.
And I've seen those videos, and it's powerful and amazing to see public servants serve the public. What a concept! I mean, it's powerful to see you do that, and I hope you continue to do that. We're about 60-ish days from the primary election, which I think is what, June 23rd, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
What's the campaign infrastructure right now? What are you guys working on, and what's the finish? The sprinting finish to make sure we get across with 50.1.
So we're doing great. We've got over 1,000 volunteers knocking doors and talking to neighbors. Folks could sign up at bradlanderforcongress.com or Brad Lander on Mobilize. I think we're nearing the point where over 15,000 people have contributed to the
Wow.
campaign. I mean, Dan Goldman is spending $1 billion, so he's going to have more money than we have. But we've already raised, I think, $1.6 million, and because people all over the country are contributing. But the real key is that this is a district full of people who are hungry for change, or hungry for fighters, and are talking to their neighbors and saying, let's do it.
I'm looking down right now, not to be rude, because I'm on your website right now and I'm donating in real time right now, because I believe you got to put your money where your mouth is. And I can't ask folks watching to donate if I'm not going to donate myself. So here I
That's
am.
amazing, Kasim. Thank you. This is the first time I think that I've gotten like a live donation here. So be like Kasim, please.
There we go. I just donated right
bradlanderforcongress.com.
now to
Amazing. Thank
bradlander.com,
you.
and we'll push this out. Look, at the end of the day, I was on a call earlier this morning with some young people who, and I think let's close with this message. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, who were frustrated with just the state of our politics and thought that voting didn't matter and activism didn't matter. And, my job is to kind of reinforce why these things matter and the history of why these matter. But I think the closing question, Brad, is, there's a lot of crap happening. I mean, we've got a likely pedophile in the White House, definitely a rapist, someone who is threatening existential war and genocide and funding one genocide and threatening to commit another. 60% of Americans can't make ends meet. And we don't see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel right now.
Yeah.
And it's a dark time. And so what keeps you going? What keeps you fighting? What makes you get up and say, hey, we can do better and we're going to do better?
Yeah. Well, first, I will say I really get it. I mean, you can't blame young people for looking at what's going on and feeling cynical about it. Where, that they can't afford the housing, can't imagine that they're going to be able to live stable lives, doesn't
Yeah.
feel like anyone is fighting for them. But here are a few bright spots to me. I went out to Minneapolis after Renee Good and Alex Preddy were killed. And the way that good neighbors of Minneapolis, out of love of their neighbors, pushed ICE out of their city. I think something like 10,000 people signed up to do ICE
Yeah.
Watch after Renee
Yeah.
and Alex were killed. And they won through being good neighbors. And that was beautiful. Look at what just happened in Hungary. Even after years of authoritarianism and
Yeah.
dictatorship, you can still recover your democracy. And then look at what's happening in New York City, where we did
Yeah.
elect our first immigrant mayor in 100 years. Where a Jewish New Yorker and a Muslim New Yorker teamed up. And
Yeah.
now Zohran is delivering on his promises and inspiring a generation of young people. So the future is not guaranteed. That darkness is out there, but fighting like hell for it, it can work. And that's what we got to do.
That's a beautiful answer. And I think it's a beautiful note to close on. Brad Lander for Congress is your website. We'll push that out. We'll keep it in the caption. Brad, thank you for being with us today. Let's have you back on before the election.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much, Qasim.
You're listening to Let's Address This with Qasim Rashid. We had Brad Lander for Congress on just now. Check him out at bradlander.com and make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to protect your human rights and our democracy. Until next time, peace.